Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing well. So let's continue our reading of Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. It's really interesting because if you get a more older text, the English is spelled different. By reading this, you'll open your mind and then you'll know more about Hobbes and you'll get used to different styles of writing. So we were dealing with the coats of arms, remember? He got into Homer and such. And now we'll continue. Okay. For Germany, being anciently, as all other countries in their beginnings, divided amongst an infinite number of little lords or masters of families. Okay, so some lords or masters of families that continually had wars with one another. So another example of humans will go to war for a lot of things, right? Those masters or lords, principally to the end they might, when they were covered with arms, be known by their followers. Yes, so the coat of arms that the soldiers would wear, they were identifiers. Right? Oh, this is house so-and-so. This is, the family of so-and-so. And partly for ornament. Both painted their armor or their scutcheon or coat. So yes, the sigils and such on a number of artifacts with the picture of some beast or other thing. So the beast, right? Like my tattoo, it was inspired by the Macedonian, kind of Italian, Greekish tradition of putting a sort of monster, scary looking thing on your shield. It would intimidate your enemy. And then it was like a sign of like, oh, this is so-and-so. So here, even for them, at this time in Germany, they would also do such a thing as well as have their coat of arms. So both symbolism and animalistic pictures on their armors and such. And also put some eminent and visible mark upon the crest of their helmets. So we have crests, right? We have their coat of arms. Lots of different examples. And this ornament, both of arms and crests, descended by inheritance to their children. So it's passed on. You don't get to change it, right? Like the Tudors, for example, were that way. To the eldest pure, and to the rest was some note of diversity, such as the old master, that is to say in Dutch, the herald, the herald, though fit. But when many such families joined together. Now notice this here. Joined is not spelled Joined. It's spelled Joyned, which looks like joined, right? Makes you think of joy instead of join. It's interesting. Made a greater monarchy. So, families joining together, making a greater monarchy. This duty of the herald, that is spelled Herealt, to distinguish scutcheons, was made a private office apart. And the issue of these lords is the great and ancient gentry. So the gentry. Okay, you have in feudalism a gentry class. So they're more wealthy, right? 16th century, 15th century, divine right of kings system of rulership, right? They have a gentry class, which for the most part bear living creatures. So the gentry class's coat of arms that they use as an ornament and as crests involves a living creature. Think of Game of Thrones with the squid, the dire wolf, House Lannister with the lion. The lion is the most famous. I guess you could also say Harry Potter, right? Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw. They have animals in the crest, right? For courage and rapine, or castles, battlements, belts, weapons, bars, palisadoes, and other notes of war. Nothing being then in honor, but virtue militarily. So, not necessarily something to just to signify honor, but something of their military prowess. Afterwards, not only kings, but popular commonwealths. Okay, so notice this term here. Popular commonwealths gave divers manners of scutcheons to such as went forth to the war, or returned from it, for encouragement, or recompense to their service. So what did they... So the scutcheons is scutchions. So the kings, they were smart, hand out these scutcheons. You went to the war, and you survived. You were given this to encourage you. It was a recompense for your servitude. We do a little bit of that with people who have purple hearts and such. But it definitely shows the military virtue as well as honor to that individual. So kind of helps you bring that soldier, person or group, closer to you, right? All which, by an observing reader, may be found in such ancient histories, Greek and Latin, as make mention in the German nation, and manners in their times. He spells Latin with an E on the end, instead of just having the N. Titles of honor, such as are Duke, here we go, honor titles, Duke, Count, Marquis, and Baron. So, I think this is actually in ranking as well. You know, the Marquis de la Fleur, like the Baron of Saxony, the Dukes, and then the Duchess, Count, Countess. I don't know the female version for Marquis. Baron is Baron and Baroness, right? I wonder what the female one was. The female one's the only one I don't know for Marcus. Marquis are honorable. So, cool. All honorable titles, as signifying the value set upon them by the sovereign power of the Commonwealth. Cool, look at that. So, when you see those titles, the sovereign power, aka the king or queen of the Commonwealth, bestowed upon them such titles. If you didn't know, in the Constitution in America, you're not allowed to have titles. I read that in the Constitution. You're not allowed to have it. Which titles were in old times titles of office and command. So we have titles of office, titles of command. Derived from the Romans. So this tradition of sort of things being bestowed by the sovereign to give honor coming from Roman tradition. Some from the Germans as well, he says, and French. French, I can see with the Marquis. I mean, yeah, because the Romans turned to the Italians, right? So you have Germany, the Romans, essentially the Italians and the French, all have that sort of monarchical bestowing of title honor in their society, especially 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, right? Dukes in Latin, duces, being general in war, counts, committees, such as bear the general company out of friendship, and were left to govern and defend places conquered. So, left to govern and defend places conquered. So, what did we read in Machiavelli? That if you wanted to hold on to a conquered place, you had to live there. So here in Hobbes, we see exactly that. Left to govern, meaning they didn't just conquer it and leave. They stayed, right? Very interesting. And pacified. So what did Machiavelli say is that you had to make them submit to you, make them work for you. Pacified is just that. So already we see Hobbes and what's his face, Machiavelli having essentially good points there. Very interesting. Marquises, marchiones, were counts that governed the marches or bounds of the empire. Look at that. Okay, cool, look at that. So the marquises, they were counts that governed the bounds of an empire. So the borders, it sounds like, the end parts. Very interesting. I like that. It's almost like, sounds like they were border patrol in a way, right? Which titles of Duke, Count, and Marquis came into the empire about the time of Constantine the Great. From from the customs of the German militia. So look at that. German militia. I didn't even know that title was anything that could be applied to the Germans. Quite interesting. But Baron seems to have been a title of the Gauls. Look at that. Gauls, remember? Caesar conquered them. History coming full circle here. And signifies a great man. So, a baron signifies a great man, and a marquis is someone who patrols the bounds of an empire. Very cool, man. Wow. Such as were the kings or princes' men, whom they employed in war, about their persons, and seems to be derived from vir, to bear, to bar. So the word itself he's showing us went from vir to ber to bar, for baron. Cool. That signified the same in the language of the Gauls, that ver in Latin, and thence to barrow and borrow, so that such men were called barones, and after barones in Spanish, varones. Hey, cool. So he just showed us how it was in the Gaulish culture, and then to the Spanish language. What a very smart man. But he that would know more, particularly the original of titles of honor, may find it as I have done this in Mr. Selden's most excellent treatise on that subject. In process of time, these offices of honor, by occasion of trouble. Okay, so the occasion of trouble, like how much trouble they're getting into, and how many they have gotten into. And then that title of honor being given to you, depending on such events, of Duke, Count, Marquis, and Baron. Very cool. And for reasons of good and peaceable government, were turned into mere titles, serving for the most part to distinguish the precedence, place, and order of subjects in the Commonwealth. So, using such titles help to distinguish you, he says. Show your precedence, show your place. Remember, we're talking about feudalistic societies. We want to know who everyone is, hierarchy, and then who's in the line of subjection, right? So, who, the chain of command, chain of hierarchy, who has what? And men were made dukes, counts, marquises, and barons of places, when they had neither possession nor command, and other titles also were devised to the same end. Wow. Very interesting, very nerdy. So this title of honor section, I mean, we learned a lot. So basically, sovereign power of the Commonwealth gives you these honorary titles such as Duke, Count, Marquis, and Baron if you have a specific duty or encountered certain things. So the counts were there to, out of friendship as well, to govern and defend the places you conquered. So you were a count if you defended and held conquered territories and had them pacified. If you were a marquis, you would also go around the march ends of the empire and make sure everything is under the control, right? You're on the edges, basically border patrol. Wow. Huh, that's really cool. And Baron came from the Gauls and had to do with being employed in war, and seems to be derived from ver to ber to bar, and that you would be there to handle business. Wow. Very interesting. So I hope you learned something. Oh, and that, remember, in the Constitution, you are not allowed to, head of America, you're not allowed to be given a title by a foreign monarch. The reason being, from my understanding, they didn't want anyone being knighted. Because in America, they'd have loyalty to England, who they were trying to get away from. Definitely didn't want their politicians being baited back into the fold of King George III with titles, because titles still held power in the 17th century. Now, not as much, but definitely in the 17th century, you didn't want your newly founded nation being overrun with foreign intrigue that you just led a revolution against. So, hope you learned something, fam. Gentry class.